Rich Lieberman is my name. We are live on YouTube. You're watching me on Thursday, towards the end of the shortest month of the year in February 2026. And the headline says it all blunt. I don't have to kowtow to these bastards. I don't have to kowtow to their stupid, phony, lie-driven radio stations like KNBR. Boy, I got to tell you a good story or two or three about their NA not available, systematic debunction, in their words, about ratings that they don't like, that they are fraught with. So instead of officially getting the bad news, they've rejected ratings, has KNBR, has Cumulus for their entire radio network in San Francisco, which they've murdered. I'll get to that in a second. KCBS putting up this nothing, complete, overrated, absolute nothing. I'm Steve Scott. I talk like this. Came out from New York and they're paying me to be the morning man because I sound like a radio broadcaster and I can't be any worse than what they got on the air. We got that guy to talk about. We're going to talk about Damon Bruce, who is trying mightily, knocking literally on doors in the Bay Area. Any radio station, please hire me. Problem is, nobody wants to hire you, Damon. Third, or second, then third, even if you worked for free, nobody wants to hire you. They're afraid of their computers. And you know why they're afraid of their computers is because of your propensity to go to various websites and, that's secondly. And third, there's nobody out there. You're trying, Damon, either go to television. Wait a minute, they don't have any openings there either. So we have all that. We have KQED. Oh my God. Let's start. Let's start at KNBR and Cumulus. I talked the other day about the ratings. And if you go to Radio Online, or you can just Google in San Francisco radio ratings, okay? And it will inscribe you to where all the radio stations did in January, okay? This is an ongoing trend. Well, KNBR is part of the Cumulus. We're not really radio. We're a company that purports to be involved in broadcasting. We're owned by a hedge fund, and we're truly awful. So Cumulus, as I predicted, hoped that I was wrong, but I was not. About a decade ago, I said they would murder radio in San Francisco and the Bay Area, destroy one of the very best, even at their twilight years, KGO, which they did. So they killed off KGO. They streamlined KSFO into this garbage, which it had fast turned into. And now what do you got? You got what's called a nothing station, and you've got basically KGO. The call letters are killed. But back to KNBR. So I said that KNBR, the ratings were so bad. And if you combine those ratings and all the other radio stations in the Bay Area that Cumulus owns, hell, why do we pay for ratings? Why don't we just NA it? Not available. We don't want to pay for something we know are completely fucked up. And that's what it is. KNBR has no ratings, has no morning show. Murph and Dorcas or Smurf and Mark, whatever the hell it is, doesn't register anything. It is there only because Murph is on his last year, so he can get 20 years in on the company and get some halfway decent pension before he's either terminated or let go, uh, or quits or whatever, however you want to verbiate it. Okay. KMBR has no ratings. 49ers even didn't help him. That's how bad they are. Okay. It's bad. Bad. They killed off KGO. So I get all these texts and emails sent my way. Oh, Rich, that NA you talked about the other day with regards to Kane, it's just cumulus. They don't pay for the rate. They don't pay because they don't want to know what we already know. Yeah, they suck. Nobody listens. Their talent pool is horrible. They have an absolute desperation mode going where they have to talk to Larry Krueger, aka Popeye, who took his family to Arizona to watch spring training, and they regard him as a personality. For God's sake, I have a better chance of scoring a date with Holly Berry than him being a real popular personality. For God's sakes, how embarrassing. No morning show, no midday show. The afternoon show is awful. Adam Copeland. Oh my God. Or Copes, who takes off time now because he's a waste of time when he's on the air. They have no numbers, folks. It's beyond embarrassing. It's kind of like now you have to rely on the Giants. And the Giants have no ratings, much like Major League Baseball. It's perceived as an old man's sport. And old, I hate to say it like this, but this is the industry term, the old white guys sport. 75-year-old guys listening to baseball on the radio. There's not enough of them. But even if there were, what kind of demographic is that to shout about? Not a lot. And radio has been dead for years. Hardly ever. To conquer radio, to conquer your own survival, when you start after touting baseball, or as many people call it, baseball, where all these networks are going broke because baseball simply stated, unless you're in Dodgerville, down in Los Angeles, or maybe one of the two New York teams, it just doesn't attract. Okay. That's why they're making all these deals with like Netflix and Apple TV so they can have some semblance of draw outside their usual cadre of old people personified. Hey, folks, that's the blunt truth. I'm being blunt. Baseball's a bore. All these teams that are mediocre, have no ratings, whose networks are going broke. The RSMs, they call them, regional sports networks. In any event, KNBR is, I don't know how they survive. I really don't. The only thing I could think of, and I'll get some notice about this, is the fact that Cumulus, the corporate owner, has these various little sludge funds. And what they do with these sludge funds, folks, is that they keep their stations going, particularly those in big markets like San Francisco. But even at that point, there is so little cash available. There is so much degradation of their overall product. And believe me, you know this. If you didn't, you know now. Terrestrial radio has been dead for years, okay? The only formats that are making it, okay, is news talk and sports talk. And guess what they did? They killed news talk. They had KGO. They had KGO. And it was still making money. It was still having some degree of rating success. They killed it. Back in 2011, God, that's now what, 15 years ago? Sounds about right. They killed KGO. They had other various stations. They killed off their bread and butter winner, which was K-Fog. K-Fog was making money. K-Fog still had personalities. 104.5 were the call letter numbers. FM. They had Dave Morey. Of course, Dave Morey was retiring, but they still had number. They still have the it factor. They killed that off. What did they do with KSFO? That station was beginning to see its ending. And what did they do? Since they killed KGO radio, they tried to combine KSFO and KGO. Well, they killed both. They killed both. So their real bread and butter winner was KNBR. Not because of their personalities, although they had personalities a long time ago. People like Harry Radnich, people like Pete Franklin. Well, Pete, that's way, way long time ago. Radnich, they got rid of him in 2016. That's like 10 years ago, right? We're coming up on the 10-year anniversary. They couldn't pay him. They could not pay him. So now they've had to rely upon basically their affiliation with the Giants and their affiliation with the 49ers. Okay? Guess what? 49ers have played a lot better, but it doesn't translate into good ratings on KNBR, AM or FM. Hasn't worked. KNBR is now running on whatever they're running on, probably a very, very limited amount of cash via a slush fund, which will soon become that of a fire hydrant. When there's a big fire, the water eventually runs out. KGO's gone. KSFO is now something, I don't know who listens, anybody who listens to that station is by accidental forces. NA, go to the San Francisco radio ratings. Yes, not available because they don't want to pay for something they probably couldn't have the money to pay. They know already is down and out. KNBR is no longer the sports leader. They've always been the sports bleeder because they bleed. They hemorrhage. Now they're officially hemorrhaging. No morning show, no midday show. A dying football team, at least in the minds of the people who actually still listen to terrestrial radio. 49ers don't translate anymore. The Giants have not been relevant for over a decade now. It just doesn't happen. And the only demographic that has some semblance of meaningfulness on terrestrial radio, as I mentioned, is either news talk or sports talk. Unfortunately, baseball doesn't cater to anything fresh or new. Why do you see all these big advertisers leaving KNBR? Like the auto body company, like the big banks, like the financial institutions. The only advertisers that you see that are at KNBR are these big kind of what they call the remnants ads that you hear that basically charge Snickers money, $2, $3 for a Snickers bar. If you're into chocolate, which of all things, I'm not, thank God, because I lost a lot of weight, but I was never into chocolate bars, okay? I like the Hershey every now and then with the almonds, not the other stuff. But my point is, KNBR has put itself into the absolute epitome of Titanic. They're sinking and sinking. They already sunk. And some minuscule amount of their leftovers have come to the top only to be siphoned off. They're just running on literally, I was going to say fumes, but that would mean they have fumes. They don't have fumes. I don't know how they exist. Turn on the radio. Their so-called stars are like these fifth grade, D-listers would be something. That would mean they have some degree of list. They got guys, folks, taking vacations in Arizona with their family, making $100 per show, doing Niners Nightly, and doing hits on the defunct, ratings non-existent morning show, Smurf and Dorcas. That's who they have to call. Larry frickin' Kruger. Larry fucked up Kruger. Mr. Popeye. Who takes a vacation to go see the Giants play Cactus League games and they're having him on? There is no radio. It's awful in San Francisco. And the little radio that we have is now head by Cumulus's malaprops. They're nothing stations. I mean, you go to New York, I've mentioned this a million times, Chicago, Philly, Miami even, Dallas, LA. They still have radio. And most of them are not Cumulus stations, okay? San Francisco, for God's sakes, we have no sports talk, have no news talk. KCBS, part of the Odyssey outrageousness. KCBS used to be a fine radio station, a news station. Now they have nothing. I see the chat room. I see a lot of you guys are out there. A lot of you folks, I'm looking at a comment right here by, what's his name? Tell me. It's beyond embarrassing. I've said that for years and people gave me a lot of shit for being blunt. I have never applied to work at KNBR, okay? In 2005, as a favor to Radnich, Gary, when I knew him pretty well, I said, I'm going to get you Larry King and Jim Brown to do little bits on the radio as a favor. And at the time, Tony Salvador, who was the last legit program director, program honcho, that's when there was money around. That's when you didn't have Cumulus fucking up stations and outright murdering forces like KGO. People say, oh, KGO is starting to decline. Everything declines, for God's sakes. That's life. It's not just radio stations. KGO still mattered. KGO still had teeth. It still had personalities. John Rothman, Pat Thurston. Yeah, it had the end of Ron Owens, but at least it had something. It was profitable. They were still delivering. You can deliver anything as long as you have some talent, you've got wherewithal, you have stamina. They killed off KGO. They tried to go cheap. Remember Gene Burns, the late great Gene Burns, killed him off. He died. He basically had a broken heart. My point is they still had a viable station in KGO. What did Cumulus do? Run by a bunch of fucking morons, complete idiotic brothers who didn't know shit. I'm going to be blunt. They fucked KGO, and I'm going to use epithets intentionally because they make sense here. I'm not going to scream F words and all that for effect and for bullshit. I'm going to scream it for being blunt and telling you guys the truth. Most of you know, most of you understand. This is the Bay Area. I'm not touting the Bay Area like it's some, goddamn cornucopia of, cosmopolitan. But again, I keep repeating, the land of Mario Savio, free speech, Silicon Valley, UC Berkeley, Stanford, food culture, coffee. And they fucked up. They absolutely killed KGO and KNBR. KNBR is now basically a skeleton. The 49ers cannot help KNBR. NA ratings not available. You know how bad it is at Cumulus in San Francisco? They had to move to Daly City, literally next door to a mortuary house. They don't want to hear their own sordid news. So yes, NA stands for not available. We don't want to pay. We probably can't pay for news that we don't want to hear about. What is that news? We have no ratings. It's not just KNBR. It's 107.7 The Bone. You want to know why they got rid of Lamont and Tinelli? Of Tinelli? Or is it Lamont? Who knows? They're both interchangeable. Why? Because they were losing and hemorrhaging there. They still have half left. And that guy wants to get the hell out. They're giving him a pulse so he stays on. But that station is a mess. And yes, FM as a whole, it's not that much better than AM, but at least it's relevant. And they've killed off that station. I mentioned 104.5, the old KFOG, great call letters. And they incorporated that into KNBR FM. And KNBR, you know how bad they are? You want to know, folks, you want to know why they're pushing YouTube and Twitch and find us here and Twitch and this and that? Because radio is so bad. And they think that the, quote, youngsters with their phones and their pulses are only watching. They're not listening. No, they're listening. They're listening to Spotify or Apple Play, wherever they get the so-called podcasts, because they know that the youngsters are not listening to their stupid radio stations and their dumbass multi-deprivation of mental state people like Dorcas or Marcus, whatever his name, and Smurfy, Brian Murphy, who's stolen money for 20 years. A complete and utter fraud, a lackey for the Giants. When the Giants were good and worthwhile, okay. Now Brian Murphy basically kisses the ass of Larry Bear, sucks him off so he can keep some of his season tickets and get his free cheeseburgers. And when he wants to take the family out to dinner, if he's not stealing money from the various restaurants he goes, do you want to know why he's on the radio so much? Pimping, which is what I call it, ads. God bless him. He steals every night. He needs the money. He needs the money. Kids are in college now. Well, one of them is in the first year of college. So Brian Murphy licks Larry Bear. He's been licking Larry Bear for 20 years and talks everything and anything Giants, mainly, 49ers, because he has to, but even the 49ers are not helping KNBR. Figure it out. They have no personalities. They have no morning show. The midday show. Greg Papa, who the hell knows? I wish Greg the best. I hope he recovers. He's now into a situation. He's fighting for his life. God bless him. That supersedes everything. But you co-host Greg Silver, who says nothing, who's the son of Mike Silver, the failed NFL writer, who sucks off KMBR so he can put his son on the radio, who's part of the half, him and Greg Papa. Greg Papa is sick. Hopefully he gets better. Wish him all the best. Ratings are bad. Then you got the travesty from 2 to 6. They keep it on the air only because they're bodies. Adam Copeland. Adam, I have no Copey Copes, no ratings. And who am I situated with? Oh my God. Greg Papa's son, Derek Papa, a producer who they put on the FM station years ago because he was a body until Greg got sick of it and came back to KNBR. Well, who came with him? His son, Derek Papa, who is now part of the, whatever they call it, dirty work. The ratings are dirty. That makes sense. So they call it dirty work, I guess. Nobody listens from 2 to 6. So they have Derek Papa on, who is shitty. Is so bad from 2 to 6, they have to put an engineer on, some guy named Thin Tin, or Tim Wynn, or Nothing Tim. Nobody listening. Then they have, at 6 o'clock, they have Larry Popeye Kruger, who they fired twice. Now they have to put him on. And then they have this new absolute garbage network called, get this, Westwood One Sports. And they're so bad. That's that new thing. They fired all the Xfinity talk shows to put this crap on. Why? Because they understood they couldn't pay these people. And now they have on this thing called Westwood One Sports Talk. Most of the shows, folks, are taped. Most of the shows, they don't have actual engineers. They're taping shows so they can put them on and theoretically try to portray them as being live. They're not. Their ratings suck. The only thing that's halfway decent about, them, these various shows, is they don't have to highlight absolute awful radio stations like KNBR. That's your Westwood One. Taped shows being portrayed as live shows, okay? Damon Bruce knocking on every fucking family radio, anything. I'm Damon Bruce. You know what they say? Who? Who are you? I'm Damon Bruce. Remember me? I used to be a big to-do. Can you hire me? No. Used to walk around, Damon Bruce did. Tell people how much he made. He got lucky. He met a sports groupie, some woman who worked at Salesforce. And she kissed up to him so she could get a couple of Giants tickets. They fell in love. And he married her. They had a child. Okay? That's basically how they loved each other. I'm not kidding you. Damon is so ill-regarded. Companies are worried about their computers. I'm just going to leave it at that. Use your own imagination. It's fact. Don't believe me? Think it over and see if you can get in touch with a guy named Tony Salvador or Lee Hammer or Bob Agnew. I want to read here. There's a comment here. Damon Bruce was clearly local radio throwing up the white flag. And yes, I realize. He did. He threw up the white flag because he's got no future here. He's not a TV guy. Was he talented on the radio? He was, but his ego His ego was so big, he thought he was the greatest gift since sliced bread. That's not the case. Damon is an actor. He puts shit on. That's about it. He spawned. This woman was looking for Giants tickets and somebody to spawn with. Damon wanted kids. He's got his kid. That's what it amounted to, okay? He's a shouter. Gary Radnich hated him. He couldn't even work with him for a month. And Gary said, God, Gary was so fed up with Damon Bruce, he had to settle for Popeye, Larry Krueger, who weighs about 500 pounds, takes trips to Arizona, and does morning bits as if he's some savior with Smurfy. With Brian Murphy, I'm going to pimp for a shitty pizza company and a crappy home village in the fucking middle of nowhere. A guy made jokes about that very same home place that you hear about every other day on fucking KNBR and other stations. That home, I don't want to use their name. I don't want to get sued. It's an opinion, but I don't want to take a chance. But it's that middle of nowhere, out in the Central Valley. Come out and buy $1 million home. We have a lake. We have damn good cuisine. First place I think of when I want to eat real good is to go in the middle of nowhere, Lathrop, California, and hang out with Marty Lurie, who's 80 years old and talks about the Giants' hitting woes. This is how bad it is. Next thing you know, Damon Bruce, for his retirement, will be taking wifey when she retires from Salesforce and Junior out to the Central Valley so they can live there and do commercials. Damon, I hear they're opening up a radio station. Maybe there's hope down the road. What else do we got here? Just discovered the live chat. I have no idea what I'm listening to, but I support Rich. Well, I hope you support. Let me tell you guys something. I'm blunt. That's the headline. I make no bones about asking for, requesting, not demanding like some others. Support. I'm not a billionaire. I'm not a millionaire. I do this. We are live. No notes. I was off the air for about 4.5 months. I had spinal stenosis surgery back on October 27th, a Monday, a date that shall live in infamy. And I was walking really, really weird. I'm digressing, but don't worry. It's okay. We're not going anywhere. My voice is holding up, unless you want me to go somewhere. And basically, I had no idea what that was going on. They did all these X-rays and MRIs, and I had this condition called spinal stenosis, where they had to clean off this compression of white stuff that went to my spine. And I had this surgery, and I obviously came through in that regard. So, folks, I'm just trying to get back into the gear here and all that. And look, I don't come here to bitch and moan every day, but a lot of you people like it when I bitch and moan. I'm not moaning. I'm not bitching. I'm telling you the goddamn truth. And I'm not trying to get a job. I'm not trying to get anything. This is my gig now, is to expose these frauds, not just in radio, television, streaming, the so-called newspaper people. Yeah, that's fraught with lots of creative geniuses. SF Gate. Oh my God. The Bay Area, a fakakta, as mom would say, zone filled with mediocre nothings. Nothing burgers. It's impossible. They had to call them impossible burgers. The fake shit, the plant stuff, which is fine. These people are they're not even relevant in that regard. They're impossible. Of course they're impossible. Where was I? So I had this surgery, and I'm back and trying to tell you all, and some of you get it. That's why this room is packed right now. Okay. I didn't plug it yet. I didn't put it up on YouTube. We're on YouTube right now, live. Thursday, the 26th, is it? Yeah. This market is a sad sack of molecular nothings. I was gone, not because I wanted to be gone, it's because I had health issues and still do. But I've lost a lot of weight, most of it nothing to do with the surgery. I'm getting my strength back and trying to survive. And I do this show to help you guys understand what you're up against, okay? What you're up against, the land of so-called Cosmopolitanville with phonies. Shit, stuff that I've broken here, story-wise. They don't want to credit me because they're embarrassed. They don't want to give me an ounce of acknowledgement because they're embarrassed. They can't stand me. Why? Because I tell them I am blunt about the fucking bullshit that they foist on you guys every day. How they can have an SF Gate, even though SF Gate is a fraudulent news site. It's basically the world in which we live in, with pizza shit and red burrito stories. And why they have to put that shit out there, because they know that most of their readership is basically mentally impaired. So they put that shit out there. Why they have radio stations like KNBR. Why they are allowed to have companies who have broadcast malpractice. Why they have fake personalities like Brian Murphy and Marcus, whatever the heck his name, Dorcas. A kid who couldn't make it in a high school radio station, but can make it on KNBR. Go figure. Seriously. Why they have no numbers. NA, not available. We won't pay. We can't pay for shit news that we already know is going to deliver to us. No one is listening. So yes, I'm not a billionaire like Michael Savage or many, 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 many millions like Sean Hannity and Mark Levin and Bill O'Reilly, who ask for money on their websites every day. Ask for money and get money. I cannot give you a $2 coffee mug and tell you to give me $50. I tell you, give me, support me, so I could continue to outman and expose these frauds. Thank God. I'm going to ask YouTube for allowing me to do this, and every now and then highlight people who I think do a good job, whether it's radio, television, streaming, internet, cable. I will. But mostly I will do this. I will be blunt, and I will tell you all what they don't want you to know, which is why it kills them to have to say shit or report shit that they stole from me because they watch me now. I came on the air 3 weeks ago today. I returned after 4.5 months off. I'm not claiming to be, Moses. I didn't part the Red Sea. I'm just here. I do a little bit of a service. I try to inject a little bit of sense of humor so you all can learn a little bit, whether it's Ron Owens or Laura Owens or frauds like Brian Murphy and KGO, KNBR, television, KPIX, fraudulent KTVU and their stupid foxification shit that you've all grown wise to. Yes, I asked for money so I could survive. If you want to throw me $2, $5, $10, yes, I survive on those donations. So I can buy coffee and tuna fish and rye bread and eat and sleep and crave waking up the next day, which is always a good thought. That I can live and give you this and not saddle myself down with bullshit and Giants tickets and crap that you long ago figured out was all bullshit, like KNBR is. Adam Copeland with his stupid, giggly hyena laugh every 5 fucking seconds because they've got nobody else to hire. Their dad, Brian Copeland, used to be a talk show host on KNBR because he checked in all the boxes, if you know what I mean. He ended up getting fired. He sued, they settled, and his son is on the radio, who has all the wit and personality of a 2-week-old kumquat, but they have to put him on and pay him whatever they can pay him, whatever they can steal from some account that they long ago lost. So they have morons like that fucker on. I'm being blunt. Carlos, let's see. Carlos Kerr was not Barry Bond. Let's see. Oh, they're talking about the Giants. Yeah. Don't lose too much. You already looked healthy. Well, I thought I was healthy. I'm diabetic, type 2. But with the weight loss, and I got these things, I kind of shaved the 5 o'clock shadow deal. It's a little bit more. No, everything's cool. I get a little, Hollywoodish. So, don't worry. I'm eating. Like, I had a full breakfast today. I got a big banana. Watch yourself now. Oatmeal, which I love. Oatmeal is like my fucking water. I had some yogurt, which I shouldn't have had, but they say it's an pro-oxidant. Was it? Is that right? What it is? I can't basically eat sugar. A lot of you out there, I'm not going to preach. I'm just going to say one thing. You don't know it, but you have diabetes too. It's everywhere. It's the fact is that we have sugar has invaded our species, and it's not good. Okay, unless you're some kid in Pleasanton who rides a bicycle, is about 16 years old. He can do whatever he wants, and he's oblivious to it all because he's oblivious. Gets away with it because he's 16, rides bikes, and doesn't have to be worried about sugar and diabetes. But a lot of you drink, which I used to do, and I drank like an idiot, and it wasn't doing me any good. And I ballooned that I didn't realize all the shit and alcohol, and I don't want to go off on that. So somebody just threw in $10, I think. Keeping. I'll get your name in a second. I want to say something to you guys too, and I've said this before. I'm going to keep saying it, and I'm not going to kiss ass. But you guys that are here constantly, you know what I'm up against, and even though at times I know I could be a pain in the ass, you want to know why? I know myself I could be a pain in the ass because I know these bastards, and they have absolute ill regard for you guys. They don't care. Their zest to want to be on the video or television supersedes everything else. It's part of their ego. They have spouses pretty much who work, who do the real dirty work, who pay the bills so that they can go on the radio or television and that you could tell them or they could tell their other asshole friends, I'm on the radio. Most of these people, they couldn't work in Dubuque. I'm not that old. I'm older than what I used to be, which is I'm trying to be Duh, on purpose to make a point. I remember when the Bay Area was cool. I remember when we had people like refer to Van Amber and Pete Wilson, not the governor, the guy that was on Cron when Cron was good. And I remember when Ron Owens was cool. Woke up 9 o'clock in the morning. Ron Owens is on KGO and Jim Eason and Jim Dunbar. Remember that guy? And Wygant, the morning news. And when you had real news people, Marsha Brandwin, George Redding, Dennis Richmond, a little too much ego. But Dennis was a professional. Gary Park, Mark Ibanez, Tom Sinkovich. I interviewed Tom, trying to get him to come back on the radio. But I want him to come on my YouTube show. I had Ross McGowan. Remember, guys? Ross McGowan and Ann Fraser. Remember they did this show on KPAX when it used to be a real TV station? People are talking. Ross McGowan. Yeah, that Ross McGowan. Had him on my show here. Ross is a great guy. Still is a great guy. And people like Jim Paymar was a complete asshole, but he was good on the air. But Joe Starkey, Monty Stickles was a complete and utter, oh my God. But he was talented. He was funny. He was irreverent. He had a personality. Monty Stickles literally would walk into KBR if he could today and kick Brian Murphy's ass. He would take him by this, punch him in the face and say, fuck you. You got no personality. Remember Bill King used to do the Raiders and the A's and the Warriors, the great Bill King, personality, play-by-play guy, worked with Lon Simmons, the late, great Lon Simmons. Bill King would laugh today. He would use the best pronouns and adjectives to vilify Bay Area media. And Lon Simmons, God bless you, Lon, wherever the hell you are. I know you're here. Lon had personality and vigor and sarcasticness, and he was great. And he could call a game, football, baseball. And Hank Greenwald, remember Hank? A real broadcaster, a real play-by-play guy. Hank Greenwald, love you, Hank. And his son, Doug, who sounds amazingly, it's eerie, like Dad. And Larry Bear didn't like Doug because Doug was an eerie reminder to Larry how you, Larry, fucked with Hank Greenwald because he told the truth. And now we have these, I guess John Miller is okay, and he is, but John Miller's kind of in love with himself, talks about himself more than he talks about the game. And now we have these mediocre, nothing white bread concoctions that are called Dave Fleming, Mr. Wonder Bread, Mr. Kilpatrick's. And you put up with this shit? Dave Fleming is your cornucopia? I remember Joe Angel. And I remember misfits like, what's his name, Glass, David Glass. As bad as David Glass was, at least he was funny. And he wasn't trying to be funny. That might be a blemish, but at least he was funny. So I have a great deal of admiration. Al Michaels used to do, believe it or not, play-by-play for the Giants back in the I think it was early 70s. And now you've got these people doing the games, frauds, imbeciles like Bob Fitzgerald doing the Warriors. Bill King would kick his ass. Not so much because the fact that Bob Fitzgerald is such a fraud, is such a nothing. Bob Fitzgerald, oh my God, who sucks off Joe Lacob every day, so to speak. This is what we've got left. Fucking Bob Fitzgerald. I'm being blunt for a purpose. Bob Fitzgerald is a fraudulent, complete and utter prick, an asshole, a personal schmuck. The players can't stand him. They only put up with him because they felt sorry for him because he had some personal problem from about 10 years ago. I've talked about this. Bob Fitzgerald is a complete and utter asshole. Okay? I mean, in those days, the Warriors were pristine. They didn't have obviously all the championships that the new team has. I'm talking about when not Joe Lacob, excuse me, when Franklin Muley owned the team and yet Bill King was the broadcaster and Al Attles was the coach. You had Rick Barry. In my book, I'm sorry, Rick Barry was the greatest shooter the Warriors ever had. Jump shooter. Steph Curry is the greatest set shooter. Steph, I'm not saying he's not great. He is. Of course he is. Hall of Famer without a doubt. Rick Barry, in my mind, was beyond just a shooter. The greatest jump shooter ever. Not just for the Warriors. Think about the jump shot in basketball. Because Rick could steal basketballs. He could rebound. He had a great pick and roll. He did things. He carried the game. And that's when the Warriors had Bill King as the play-by-play guy. And he would do things like remember the simulcast, or he gave you the radio account and the television account, and they didn't have to have multiple announcers, didn't need it. So I get a little nostalgic, folks, because, again, loved Van Amber, loved Bill King and Lon Simmons, Hank Greenwald, and yes, Peter Giddings, a real weather guy with a personality and not walking in a fucking computer bank so he can embed your fucking mind about no rain for the 14th straight day. Big fucking deal. So yes, I rely upon donations to give you this. I'm not Mr. Superman. I am fraught with various mistakes. I don't have bookcases in the back with pretty little bobbleheads, okay? But I'm live. I am local and national and international when it is worthwhile. And I give you content that I don't have to look down at fucking notes. I am blunt, and I'm not beholden to these goddamn organizations like Disney that owns Channel 7 and other television stations. So you know what? When you turn on Channel 7, you have to see Kristen Z kiss the fucking ass of Disney and blow them up as if they need blowing up. I'm talking about, or CBS that owns Channel 5, or NBC that owns local NBC Bay Area. Not that they're bad. Occasionally they do some good things. But by and large, the medium here, it's not just here, but it's primarily here. For an area of this size, the amount of shit that we have, that you guys and gals, have to look at and listen to, those few of you who still listen, is abysmal. It's really decrepit. So I'm kind of like your ombudsman. I tell you what they don't want you to know. I have repeated this, I know. Because if you only knew how much they don't want you to know this, some of you get it, some of you have access, and you know what I'm talking about. Most of you do not. I'm here to give you the goods on the bullshit that they run out there, which is why, again, they hate me, which is why you have to put on the news at 10 o'clock and watch Channel 2, like it or not, fall asleep, Remember Channel 2, the days? Frank Somerville. Yes, he has demons. Yes, he's got issues. I've had him on my show here. Frank, talented anchorman. Looks it, smells it. He's got some issues in life, like I did and do. But he's that talented a guy. It's a shame that he's pretty much through here in the Bay Area, probably beyond all of that. But Frank had a pulse. He knew how to anchor the news. And now we're reduced to alfalfa sprouts and breadcrumbs. Gary Radnich's face was great, especially after a martini. You know something? I don't know who said that. I'm reading off. I can't see her. Gary didn't drink. He took steroids, which puffed his face up, made him look. First off, Gary Radnich is a Mormon, and I can tell you this firsthand. He does not drink. I'm not, spying in his bedroom at 3 a.m, but he doesn't drink. He looks like he does drink because his face is always bloated, and he's at an age now where he ain't getting any younger. He's 75 years old. So, he's not old, but he's no longer, 50-year-old Gary Radnich. I can assure you Gary doesn't drink. Let's see here. Let's see. Thank you for the $10, whoever did that. I was just making an overall point. Folks, your $5, 10, 2, whatever you can afford, 50, 100,000, enables me to live and to pay insurance bills and put in time so that I can, God forbid, have issues come up to me like spinal stenosis. I don't know how the hell I got that, but I got insurance and it covered it. And I do this. I just said, I'm not parting the Red Sea. I'm not Moses. I said to you, I was maybe your ombudsman and telling you stuff that they don't want you to know. And it's not always going to be a downer, but by and large, the crap that you guys have to endure, these know-nothings. I make jokes about them coming off the bus from Fresno, these 20-somethings who have no clue. Forget talent. How about just capability, anything, to go on the air and give you this kind of shit? It's just unbelievable, considering not that long ago we had such great people like I mentioned, as I said, Amberg and Jerry Jensen and Martin Wyatt and Jan Hutchins. I just named those people off the top of my head. Eddie Alexander was very troubled, great sports guy. John O'Reilly, Peter Giddings, Marcia Branwin. Remember Marcia? Anna Chavez at Channel 5. What a sad way to end her career here because of the circumstances that got beyond personal. Sylvia Chacon, Ruben Vasquez, Jim Dunbar, rest in peace, Jim, Ted Wygant, Dave Morey, retired up in Oregon, I think, who watches this show. Couldn't stand the guy. I still can't stand him, but he was a personality. He had some element of creativity. Alex Bennett, an anti-Semite, anti-Zionist. Alex Bennett, a.k.a. Alex Schwartzman. Live 105 and KMEL. He does a show on YouTube. Alex Bennett is a piece of it and shit, and then some. But I'll give him this. I could separate the personal and the professional. Okay? And people like Alex Bennett. and Monty Stickles and Joe Starkey. Joe wasn't the greatest play-by-play guy, but he was a personality. He could write, give you perspective, and Cal football and all the great things. Stanford, Don Klein at KCBS. Stan Bunger wasn't one of my favorites, but he was okay, pretty damn good, beyond above average. Al Hart, Bob Melrose, great street reporter at KCBS. Barbara Taylor was the City Hall reporter for KCBS. Pat Thurston at KGO. Pat occasionally would get annoying. We all get annoying. I get annoying. Don't I ever? But Pat had a personality. She can interview. She can do shows up the yin yang. Pat Thurston, yeah, miss her. Just spoke to her about a week ago. Used to be at KGO. And John Rothman. I mentioned Jim Dunbar. Jim Eason. Do you guys remember Jim Eason? I'm crying. I miss Jim Eason so much. Do what you can, but behave yourself. Remember, he used to say that. He would go off the air at 4 o'clock on KGO. Do what you can, but behave yourself. And he always opened his show with Dave Brubeck's famous song, which escapes me right now. Take Five. Of course, Take Five. Take Five. And Owen Spann. And yes, Ron Owens interviewing Gavin Newsom. Or Ray Taliaferro. We forget about Ray. Made us laugh and cry sometimes. But shit, talk about appointment radio. Ray Taliaferro compared to some of these mutt yuts that they have on today. Wait a minute. They don't have anybody on today because they have no radio station. That's right. They fucking killed KGO. Ray Taliaferro and Stickles and Wygant and Dunbar. Mayor Art Finley. Remember Art Finley, everybody? Art Finley from 7 to 10. Weeknights on KGO. Art Finley. They called him Mayor Art. Man. And that was a long time ago. Long time ago. But boy, oh boy, I forgot about Art Finley. You wanted to know about San Francisco. You wanted to know about the Bay Area. You wanted to talk and have genuine conversation about the goings on in the Bay Area and San Francisco specifically. There was nobody better than Art Finley. What a treasure. Some of you people already know about Art Finley and Dunbar. And when KCBS was a rival, a real rival, when they had legitimate news gathering operations, and now the shit that they have today with Steve Scott, a complete and utter falsified moron that they schlepped in from New York because he's a body. And real play-by-play people like Bill King, Lon Simmons, Hank Greenwald. Rich's stream of content is better than I can write at time. Well, thank you. And, folks, I know I'm not, Orson Welles or Clint Eastwood in his prime. I give you a better rundown and a better facsimile of Bay Area culture and radio and television. You can ask me any, and I open up the chat room here right now. I am live on YouTube. It's Thursday, the 26th of February. If you want to make a donation, you're damn right. I ask for money so I could keep on doing this and being blunt. There's being blunt bad and being blunt good. And I dish all of it up. Because you know why? I can. And I can remember And I know people and have interviewed people like Tom Sinkovitz and Marky Banyas and Jerry Jensen. Like you, many of you, I grew up watching Channel 7 when it was Peter Giddings. Remember, he used to ski down the mountain when it was snowy? It was like what? It was 50 years ago, folks, this month, February 4th, a little over 50 years ago, 1976. It snowed, and it wasn't like the little shitty fake snow. It was real snow. It was like 2 inches. Go look up Google pictures of the Bay Area, the Golden Gate Bridge. And I remember being in downtown Oakland. There was 2 inches of snow adjacent to Lake Merritt. The entire Bay Area was filled with snow, real snow. And we were all, oh my God. I give you a facsimile of what we endured, what we enjoyed, what we despised. I give you, folks, a moment by moment facsimile of what KGO was at its greatness. And people in the overnight like Talia Farrow and Bob Trebor and Owen Spann and Jim Eason and people like that, and Ron Owens when he was becoming the personality of San Francisco culture, not just radio. When we had great mayors over across the bay. You guys remember Joe Alioto and George Moscone, rest in peace, and Harvey Milk, rest in peace, supervisors. Terry Francois. I lived in Oakland. I grew up in Oakland. I went to Skyline and marveled at how great San Francisco was. I remember the cop shows like Streets of San Francisco and Carl Malden and Michael Douglas, and they drove around in the Ford LTDs and they had a great show on. And I remember those great clubs like the Condor, which I couldn't get into, but I remember Carol Doda and the Boops and the Xeon and the Neon at night and Gino and Carlos and the place on Van Ness Avenue. The building's still there. It's not there anymore. Great Italian restaurants and places. The little place in that little side street alleyway. Somebody will remember. But that was when the Bay Area was such a special place. The media was giant. And this is not one of these retrospective, everything was great back then. It wasn't great. We had homeless, not the amount that we have today, but we had great institutions like KGO. Didn't have to get murdered as it was eventually by Cumulus. We had great television news operations like Channel 7. I mentioned Van and Jerry and Pete Giddings and Marcia Brand went over at Channel 2, who migrated over to KGO TV. Nothing to do with the internet. They would have survived and thrived because they were good, because they had personality, because they didn't live off of emptiness and phoniness, because they can talk and communicate like I am to you guys, because I care. And I remembered I was able to be a kid, literally, at age 13 and go to the old KGO studios on 277 Golden Gate and get to meet people like Monty Stickles and Dunbar and Wygant. And thank God, Ron Owens, who I regarded as my own cousin Brucey. And Ron took me into the studio at KGO. And when my mother got sick, it was Larry King and Ron who called up and called my mom and wished her Nothing but Godspeed. So I can go back, and I don't mind crying or being emotional because the media, the people, and that was the essence, that was the spirit. The people, they wouldn't bullshit you, they would talk to you. And some of them, you got lucky, you got to know them. Some of them were kind of badasses. Most of them were cool people, like Ron used to be. I got to know people that were special people. Monty Stickles had a terrible, terrible, terrible reputation. Monty was a bit of a partier, but he was a Notre Dame guy, San Francisco native. But Monty was there to help. And when I had issues with relationships and girls that I thought I could probably marry and all that, and it didn't happen, I'm not going to get into that. Monty would be there, believe it or not. Of all people, yeah, Monty Stickles. Today, you have zombies, no personality. They hate me because I dare bring in the people that had more than just walking around material. They lived and died in San Francisco and Oakland, San Jose. I got to know, not very well, Rika Chacon from KGO Channel 7, the South Bay guy, and Eddie Alexander, the sports anchor at Channel 4. Got to know these people. And Ed Arno. Remember Ed Arno? Remember Ben Williams? He was the street reporter for KPIX in the East Bay. I got to know people like Gary Park. God bless your soul, Gary Park. Rest in peace. And Mark Ibanez, who took over for Gary, recently retired from Channel 2. Got to know, not very well, George Redding, Pat McCormick, one of the most creative people, not just in the Bay Area, but beyond. Remember Charlie and Humphrey, the two little characters that everybody would go home, race home from school, and put on Channel 2 and see Charlie and Humphrey. You guys know what I'm talking about. I can't go into detail. Dialing for dollars. 10 from the top, or whatever the hell it was. A real old-fashioned dialing for dollars. Remember that? God, I hate to say this. Those were the days, my friend. We thought they'd never end, but they did. And I love talking about Bay Area media and culture because it was a hoot, because it had soul and it had longevity and meaning. And people cared. I know it's a different time, and don't give me this shit. Well, the internet. Who cares? I think the internet back then, they probably would have even been more driven and more passionate than they were already. I miss those days. And go ahead, fuck with me. Tell me I'm this, that, or the other. I miss those days in the 70s. Real places and people and things and women and men, young, old, middle, cared about their craft. Now we have these schmendricks, these nothings, complete and utter zeros like Brian Murphy, who couldn't give you a personality if his life depended on it, and frauds, the absolute fraud, and there are all of them, not just in media, politicians. Oh, there's a few good ones left, but by and large, no. Look at our culture. I'm sorry, folks, I don't mean to be a downer. I'm reminiscing, but I'm also lamenting too. And if you don't like it, I'm not forcing you to stay here. I know I'm resonating with a lot of you because a lot of you are still up here, and I'm appreciative. I can't go straight into it. Yeah, I see certain things here, and I can't read it here. I don't know what this is. What do we got here? But yes, I like doing this every now and then, because our media outlets had more passion back then. It had better people. Now we have KQED, which is a complete and utter daily, hourly fraud, both the radio and television. When was the last time you watched anything on KQED worthwhile? It's basically masterpiece theater, every now and then some kind of a documentary, but none of it comes out of San Francisco. Got one show. They call it NPR or whatever the hell. Check, please. That's our famous show out of KQED. The radio, a bunch of wind chimes, and people from Berkeley who eat alfalfa sprouts. That's supposed to be good. I sound like my dad. It's supposed to be good. And so, yes, I lament, I reminisce, I examine, and I talk about what I consider to be, yes, the good old days. Not everything was great, but we had culture. We did have passion. We did have meaningful media and the people that cared, that were utter professionals that could tell you about things beyond just the highs and lows, the temperatures in downtown San Francisco, and not repeat every fucking 5 seconds the same weather shit, and have degrees of personality like Pete Giddings, who was a complete asshole, but he was funny and interesting. It can make you laugh. Yes, that Pete Giddings, the weather guy at Channel 7, and Don Sanchez, and Ross McGowan, and Dennis Richmond, and Gary Park, and Mark Ibanez, and the Hamlin brothers, and Pete Wilson, and Jan Hutchins, and the late, great Dave McElhatton. Boy, do I miss Dave McElhatton. And Ann Fraser. God love you, Ann Fraser. I worked with Ross McGowan. I miss you, Ross. I know you're very much alive, living up north in Healdsburg. I miss you, Ross McGowan. I cared about the Bay Area media. We all did. We didn't have, like I say, the Schmendricks, by and large, covering us today. No personality, no geniusness at all, not even mediocrity. We have what we have. And KQED, we could give you auctions, but they were entertaining, unintentionally funny. I'll let you decipher on that. When we had people like Jan Yanahiro, Richard Hart, Evening Magazine, Channel 5, Cron with people like Paymar, and Tom Sinkovitz, who came later. Man, what do we got here? I'm going to take a break and come back later today, Thursday, and talk about everything I've addressed. And I appreciate you coming on here. If you want to donate, do what you can do. That's great. If you want to email me, rich.lieberman@gmail.com. Text me, 415-999-4454. And I will be back because I like doing this. I needed to do this, and now I will do it, and I will expound upon it later on. So thank you. I'll see you in a little bit.